Welcome, folks, to a quick news update episode from Business from the Bass Boat podcast. Because I'm kind of our guy out west here and cover some of the West Coast stuff for the Serious Angler Network. Big news today, as we kind of see shakeups with rule changes and everything else. Just going to do a quick episode on Major League Fishing's article with all of the Toyota Series schedule being released for 2025. And as a part of that, read through the bottom here and look down. It's like, gosh, there's no West Coast stuff. It cited in the article basically says, as a part of its ongoing efforts to focus on key growth areas, MLF will suspend the Toyota Series Western Division in 2025 and expand its Phoenix Bass Fishing League, the BFL's schedule with 6 additional regionals serving its 24 BFL divisions. So that is the news, kind of breaking news from that perspective. We've had a lot of West Coast talk with all the different organizations on this show specifically, but I figured who better to get on than in a quick news release to bring on Mr. Allen, the guy behind a lot of the Toyota Western Series weigh-ins and everything else. And so without further ado, let's bring Allen in.
Hey.
What, what's
Thanks for
going on,
having me,
Allen?
man. Oh, what a day. What a tough day. But a good day, tough day for some, when one door closes, another one opens. So yeah, it's been a day.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. A lot of different changes in the fishing industry right now. And I guess more than anything, it's been first of all, thank you for all of the time and effort you have put into the West Coast. I think that anyone who has fished a Western Toyota with yourself as the weighmaster would say the same
Mm,
thing, which is it's just so much fun and has been such a blast to have you there, the excitement that you bring to everything. So
Thank
number
you.
one, thank you for all that you have done. Um, and I guess number two is just, man, how are you feeling about this? I know, obviously there's been a reduction in anglers competing out west, like everywhere, but what is going through Alan's head today with this news being released?
Selfishly, I feel, and I'm an open book. If
Mhm.
anybody spent any amount of time with me at the tournaments, at dinner or takeoff, I'm a firm believer of honesty is the best policy. That way, I never mess up. I'll just tell the truth. And I always wear my heart on my sleeve. And I think that's what brings the passion that I try to bring to each and every tournament, to each and every conversation. Um, so selfishly, I feel like a failure, just being honest. Um, really, I really poured a lot into um, the West. Um, and not because I of a job. Being a tournament director is a fantastic job. It's such a blessing. You and I have done these before and just talked about how I got into the game, how I got into the industry, and I'm blessed every day. But to be a tournament director, I've always said you get to be the guy that gives the hug or embraces the angler that wins. But you also have to be the guy that gives a hug and embraces the angler that loses. So I get very close to the anglers. I'm very close to the sport. I have a passion for the anglers, a passion for the sport. So when I decided and took the opportunity to jump in with both feet in the Toyota Series Western Division, I knew it was going to be something that the deck was kind of stacked against me to start with. It was in a pretty bad downturn as it was. We were just coming off of kind of a new-ish Wild West tour trail. Wild West Bass was really coming on after COVID. Um, More mouths to feed, if you will, in the West. Where guys could only dictate so X amount of dollars to X number of tournaments. I mean, before it just runs out. So I knew I was going to jump in with both feet, and I did, and I'm glad I did. I got to really connect with so many people like yourself and the Kins and I mean, right now my mind is, but like I told you before in our text message, I'm just kind of blank. But There's so many guys that I connected with that I leaned on and worked with in hopes to bring back something that they used to have. I hear all the time that why don't you guys just do like they did back in the National Guard days? Well, nothing's like it was back in the National Guard days, uh, anywhere in
Sure.
the country. So you have to revamp things and try to make them what they are now, the best that we can. So we jumped in 3 years, and unfortunately, I feel like just wasn't able to succeed. Um, I thought for sure that by bringing the top notch tournaments and the quality of tournaments and the product that we bring to the West, I thought that would succeed. I thought match that with the staff that we have in the West, which is top notch, and match that with a personality like myself that really wanted to go above and beyond always to do whatever I can. But unfortunately, it just didn't. It almost seems like our program just did not fit
Mm.
on that end of the country. It's very, very successful everywhere else in the country, but for whatever reason, that program we've come to realize just didn't fit out there in that market, and slowly saw it deteriorate from inside. And of course, we know what happened with Wild West. And then, then of course, Mark Lassane and the BAM Trail started up, and again, it's just another mouth to feed.
Mhm.
I've been very busy on my phone today, obviously, taking phone calls and text messages and social media. Um, and someone asked me why. Why do I feel that we could not be successful with what we feel is the top platform, nationwide coverage, um, best media department in the game? Not to throw any shade at anyone else. Mark does an amazing job. He's got an amazing magazine, but it's just not that national network that MLF brings. Um, but my answer to him that asked, why did I think that it didn't succeed? And when I saw One Bass and BAM Pro or 60 and BAM Pro Am and our tournament schedule for
Mhm.
2025, it just hit me. I was like, there is no way this can happen. I mean, from February to June, there was a tournament with those three organizations every week except 1 week a month. And
Wow.
sometimes, and some of those months was all four. That spreadsheet that Billy and Mark and myself kind of worked off of to work together on permitting, um, I color coded it based on their company's color, and it was mind blowing. Of every one of these is $1,000 or more entry fee. Every one of these is a multi-day tournament. Every one of these is somewhere on the West Coast. It is impossible for all three organizations to be extremely successful. They can be successful, but to be extremely successful, because during our current economy, um, it just there's just not enough anglers with the flexibility to do them all.
Mm.
Everybody wants to, um, but it's just not there. And it has shown the last few years that at least I've been out there. And then in 2025, we did draw permits. We were prepared to open at Shasta in January and Clear Lake in March, and then the Delta later in the year. And we even had goo gobs of hoops to jump through at the Jamboree for permit draw.
Mm.
There was another organization on every single weekend that we were looking for just to be flexible around one bass and Mark's trails. So very difficult. So many tournaments, a very oversaturated market, if you will, at the highest level. You
Yeah,
know,
the bigger stuff. Mhm.
yeah, yeah, and I get it. The rest of the country has um, the opens and the Toyota Series, but you're talking about 20,000 anglers. I don't know the number, but it's astronomical amount of anglers that it draws from, where the West Coast has all these tournaments. You might have 300. And I don't even know the number on that either. I'm just thinking how many guys fished Toyota Series, how many fished Wild West, how many fished one bass, and then how many of those independently. I've seen a lot of these really, really smart anglers from the West, and I'm talking about Ken Ma, that put together amazing statistics um, on who fished solely what trail, how many crossovers between this and between that trail. And we shared all that information, and it was amazing. But it's mind blowing the difference between the western part of the country and the rest of the country when it just comes to sheer numbers of anglers that are available to fish those events. So,
Right.
yeah. Um, so that was a long answer to how I'm feeling. I guess I just got the rambling there. But
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I think it's good stuff. I mean, I think every time I've had yourself on or another Western tournament director's thoughts, I always ask, are there too many mouths to feed from a tournament perspective out west, right? Like
yeah,
there's a massive there's just so many less bass anglers out west
mhm,
than other parts of the country, and our areas are so spread out. It's very difficult to travel
it
as
is.
a West Coast guy. So I mean, like, unfortunately, we lose the national connection out west with Major League Fishing. I think, we've lost that with BASS for quite some time. And so really, if you're going to be a Western guy that's going to try and make it to the top tier pro level, and I'm talking about Bassmaster or BPT, um, you need to be back east or traveling the entire time, right? And we're seeing like we've seen that for generations. And right now, you look at the Bassmaster EQs, and you've got both Cody Meyer and Andrew Loberg. Both are sitting, pretty as far as to qualify for the Elite Series in 2024 or 2025 rather. And so I do think you miss out the connection there. Although if you really want it, you got to kind of do what those guys are doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I saw it more and more every year just within the Toyota series. You know, Previously our rules were, if you finished high enough within the Toyota series, you got to advance to the invitationals or the BPTs or whatever it may be. And we saw just in the first couple of years I was there, from Cody Spets to Philip Dutra to Lane Olson,
Mhm.
um Ty Owls went on to the opens. But they they were leaving, and when those guys leave, they move, because obviously geographically it makes more sense for them to live on this side of the country and compete at that level. You got Christian Ostrander, that
Mhm.
was the highest finisher from the Western Division at the Toyota Series Championship, and he took that $10,000 bonus and went and jumped in the opens and has having a good year. And for a minute, hot minute, he was right there in the run, you know, in the EQ series. So guys, guys are leaving the West, but it was really hard for me to replenish it, you
Mm.
know. So either the anglers are getting older or they're advancing to the next levels. And
Mhm.
I was able to have some great support from Tyson Chrisman and um, and Matt Thomas, and a few of the guys that were always previous, yourself, that were co-anglers way back in the day, but have moved up to the pro side. But unfortunately, more are leaving to move or to the next levels than we have replenishing from the bottom up.
Mhm.
And that's it's not a good decline to have. Our high school and college fishing tournaments we ran out there, we backed up every one of our Toyota series with a college event as well as a high school event. And it's crazy. Our college events here on this side of the country average 238 boats per tournament in college. And then we run the college fishing on the West Coast and we have 16.
Mhm.
And I get it. It's a long way away. But that's just a small example of how it's not replenishing from within. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not knocking on anyone. Fishing is is an amazing sport, but it's a costly sport. We all know that there comes with
Sure.
costs. You've got to be, especially at this level that doesn't have a feeder system like the BFL, where people
Mhm.
may say, well, why don't you have a BFL, out on the West Coast? Maybe we will. There's been talks throwing that around that possibly start, in the future of another BFL division out there. But at the same time, it's really difficult because geographically the lakes are so spread out. Um, from the Delta to Havasu to Shasta. I mean, it'd be really hard geographically to have a $200 entry fee tournament that covers the West.
Right. Right. Yeah, just from your return standpoint. But
Sure.
oh man, the thing I lean on always against the West is just, I mean, there's a lot of things that go against it. The fishing is not one of them. There's just some incredible fishing out west, and so it is always a little frustrating to see. It's like, gosh, it's a different world, or a very strong fisheries in the West, and I hope that at some point we kind of see some of that pro level stuff seemingly going away further and further. Right? I mean, it's almost like you kind of got to make your decision. Are you going to stay? Kind of like a BAM or a one bass where you are locally to the Western region, or are you going to go and push for the opens and chase that kind of a thing, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
kind of been that way, or that writing's been on the wall the last 5 to 10 years that you kind of have had to make that decision. But now it's even showcased more, I think, with the Western Toyotas pulling out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the last thing I wanted to do, or last thing Kathy wants to do. And, but like you said, with more and more of the elite series and the BPTs and even the invitationals and the opens, there's not a present in the West from those aspects because again, costs are so high, permitting's a nightmare.
Mhm.
Um, and just I'm not blaming anybody but myself, but the following, you know. Um, would we love to see a BPT or an invitational, um, on Clear Lake, or Shasta, where the numbers are outrageous? Can you imagine on the BPT, the score tracker, you
No.
know,
Yeah,
going
God.
crazy from those guys that are the best in the world? I couldn't imagine.
Right.
But what's the cost, for a predominantly Eastern angler, highest of levels from the Elite Series all the way to the B and the BPT,
Mhm.
for them to make a run at the West? That's just why it doesn't happen. I mean, logistically, you're asking everyone pretty much to go to the. And I guess if it was to happen, which there's always talks. I really thought I was going to see Havasu on the BPT schedule for 2025. So I know
Wow.
that, yeah, Havas kind of a Havasu uh, clear Delta run. I believe one day when it happens, it'll be a run like that. It won't go out and just do one standalone event.
Right.
It may be like a Sam Rayburn to a Grand Lake to a Havasu to a Clear Lake to a Delta, to Pierre, South Dakota. You know what I mean? That's the only way something like that could make sense, that it would be, all in motion, but pretty hard on the anglers to do so.
No doubt about it. No doubt, man. Yeah, well, I think we wrap this up by basically just saying, like, I don't think you should be blaming yourself with any of this. I mean, I think the effort was there, right? I mean, I think that there's headwinds against you, and you can only do so much through all your passion and efforts, and it shows a lot that you're taking responsibility there. But at the end of the day, um, I think the writing was a little bit on the wall that there's not enough mouths to feed out west,
Yeah.
and I think that was kind of always there, I guess, from my perspective. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
unfortunately. But I will end with saying this, that the 3 years that I got the opportunity to be out there were phenomenal. I never would have dreamt that I'd be sitting here on a 9/11, with a
Yeah.
horrible date that it is, but with you. I
Mm.
never dreamt that I would have met some of the amazing people that I got to meet and see some of the most amazing things. Heck, I weighed a 12-pounder. Never weighed a
Think
12
about that.
pounder. My man,
Yeah.
Big Bass Blackamore, busting a 12-pounder on me, and so just I've got a lot of memories, and it may not be done. The press release and Kathy and I and Mark McWaw and and all the powers that be at MLF. That's why the word suspend is in there. You know,
Mm,
it's not the end all be all. We really tried to make some extra things work this year, like a one-off tournament, kind of like start like a U.S. Open type thing,
mhm.
where we just did one annual deal in it, brought people to the Tour Series Championship, but just didn't work this year. So the word suspend is in there, um, is awesome because it means I may get the opportunity to come back out there. And I hope we do. Just it may be under different demographics, a different different logistics of a tournament. But if we do, I better see all you mugs at the scales, and you better show out because I don't want to do this twice.
I'm with you. I'm with you, man. Well, I appreciate it, and certainly we'll miss walking across the scales with you someday. I'm sure that will resume somewhere across this country. So man, with all of that, thanks for taking the time out, and yeah, definitely a day to remember. 9/11. Thanks for bringing that up
I know,
in,
right?
in our country's history and everything that we have going there. So certainly appreciate that, and man, have a great rest of your evening, and I'm sure I'll see you down the road somewhere. And man, biceps are looking big. Stay in the gym, my dude.
Yeah, my guy. Appreciate you, buddy. God bless you.
My man. We'll see you later.